So I want everyone to take a look at the slides. So these are some abstract names you may have heard of, but someone from 50 years ago would ask you, what is the Instagram? But to you, this might mean something, and you might spend many, many hours each week using these services in your life. And what if I told you that they are making your life look like this? When it really and should be looking like this. So let me explain. To give you a little background, last summer my sleep schedule looked like this. It's a little distorted, but it's a little concerning that this may not look alien to some of you out there. But this was absolutely terrible. I would drag on each day feeling worse than the last, and I would justify my extreme use of video games and social media as a means to ease my anxiety and escape from my trashy life. Eventually, I realized that this was not sustainable, and I got too lazy to be lazy, so I decided to fix it up a little. Then, my sleep schedule became this. Yeah, not much better, but good enough for now. Right, so this continued for a couple more weeks across summer break until I came across this video calling for a dopamine detox. Basically, it was this guy saying that we needed to quit social media, music, video games, candy, and streaming services for a week. And basically, like some kind of fairy tale, he goes on to live the best 7 days of his life. At the time, this seemed absolutely absurd. Like, come on man, was this just another get rich fast scam video that I just got clickbaited into? But I knew that I was definitely not going to fall for this guy's trap. Like, seriously, did he hate being happy? Well, unfortunately, I hated being happy too. Because the next day, I decided to uninstall Instagram and I set a screen time limit just to be safe. That was August 7th, 2021, the day I started my dopamine detox. And from then on, I've been able to declutter my lives from these services and been able to live a more intentional life. You see, these services are incredibly hard to unlearn, and they become ingrained in our brains. And it requires something large, something like a dopamine detox for us to truly move on and forget about them. These services are a lot like dots of dopamine. You can see here is GitHub streaks, which I like to compare to these dots of dopamine to. Some days you may use more of these services, some days you may use less, and some days you may not even use them at all. But at the end of the day, when you look back, it is a constant big chunk of green with little that can identify you as a dopamine detoxer. What we need to truly escape these habits is a clean slate, something that looks like this. Something without the past identity that reinforces our habits that allows us to fall back on. Because too often do we fall into this dialogue and let our past identity dictate our decisions of the future. We fall into dialogue and the mindset is telling us things like, oh, I was doing just fine last week, I'll just keep using social media. Or, video games have been making me happy, why should I quit? Right? And it is exactly this mindset that binds us to our phones to keep tapping and giving away our money to Silicon Valley. And I say that because it is true. Silicon Valley is a lot like the big tobacco companies of the past. They know a major biological weakness in humans called our dopamine receptors, and they've been exploiting that to make mad bank. So, if that isn't a red flag, I don't know what is. Right. There's been increasing amounts of studies pointing to the harmful effects of these services. So, what's really stopping you from quitting? Alright, let's go back to that top spread image I showed earlier. Remember when I said our lives look like this? That's because each pile of trash represents a synthetic high that we didn't work for. a piece of dopamine that piles up slowly as we live our lives. And with all that clutter built up, we're unable to steer clear and actually live our lives. That's what's stopping us. The thoughts of dopamine grasping onto our legs and preventing us from ever escaping this dumpster of a life. So you may ask me, why should I partake on this crazy dopamine detox like you and be fooled, right? Well, my first answer to that is that we get to partake in actual meaningful activities. Activities such as working on our passions, learning new things, and exploring our world around us. But these things take a lot of effort, but at the same time generate a lot of dopamine in return. But the problem lays in these services that require absolutely zero effort at all. Why would we go through all the pain to conduct these meaningful activities when we can get the same amount of dopamine from our phone? Why don't we take a look at a case study? So here we have some activities that an average teenager could probably relate to. And you see, the second activity, called social media, is quite a jarring one that takes absolutely zero effort and provides 100 dopamine points. With that there's basically zero chance that we'll meet with friends, play piano, or even do our homework. But what if I did something a little sneaky and removed that? Looks a lot different now, doesn't it? We might be actually motivated to meet with friends, play piano, or heck, even do our homework. Deprivation works. And if we remove these trivial dopamine-fueling activities from our lives, we might actually be motivated to do the hard work. My second answer to why is that we get to experience the real thing. Instead of getting texts on our phone from our friends, we get to talk and have real human interaction. Instead of living in fantasy video game worlds, we get to learn more about our actual world. And instead of watching trivial TikToks from day in to day out, we get time to actually pursue our dreams and ambitions that we always wanted to. Upon reflection, a couple things changed for me. In the past, I used to play video games in the morning, and I replaced that with a new habit of meditating. And in the past, I used to check social media all night and replace that with journaling. The habits that were once ruining my life on the left became habits on the right that were giving me confidence, security, structure, and happiness. And now that I'm 6 months or more into my dopamine detox, I'm able to see this clearly and really realize the true benefits of living this more intentional life. So you can see that actually wasn't all that happened. There's a lot more benefits, as you may have assumed, and things like my social anxiety have been eased because of my dopamine detox. I used to be an ambitionless bum who was unable to communicate with people without a keyboard in front of him. I used to be terrified of social interaction, constantly felt anxious, and pulled out my phone at all times to avoid social interaction. But I'll admit, that wasn't all caused by dopamine. But dopamine allowed me to realize that these problems existed in my life. It let me reflect and gave me the time to reflect on these activities and allowed me to truly realize what my life had looked like at the time. It allowed me to be more present with my friends, to listen what they had to say, and allowed me to enjoy old passions of mine. And you betcha I fixed that sleep schedule. So I want everyone to reflect a little bit here that we're all gathered here today, but really do ask yourself, how much value are these services really adding to your life? Could you maybe go without playing video games every day? Did those 50 people you texted on Instagram really have any meaning to your life? And could your time spent watching TV be better spent on something else? We can choose to live more intentional lives. Lives where we are free from these expedient surges of dopamines and are able to live more decluttered lives. And the first step is to change these thoughts of dopamine. You see, these thoughts of dopamine don't have to be of the addictive type. They can be something hard-earned, something earned through years of blood, sweat, and tears. And it is in that struggle that we can find passions, that we can find direction and goals, not from the resulting dopamine. We can better equip ourselves with identity of hard-earned dopamine that can generate a positive feedback loop to promote ourselves and allow ourselves to be motivated to improve. Living for instant gratification may produce the same chemical happiness in the short term, but to live a truly fulfilling life in the long term requires us to be on the other side of the spectrum. Thoughts of dopamine don't just add up, they compound. So choose your dopamine wisely, get addicted to the good stuff. Thank you.